It is 5:14 a.m. on the 12th of November 2025. The sky over the Caribbean is still dark when 5 fast Venezuelan patrol ships burst out of the horizon and race straight toward the path of the US carrier strike group. From the bridge of the USS George Washington, the first sound is not a voice. It is the sharp, rising collision alarm echoing through the steel frame of the ship. Radar screens flare bright as all 5 contacts push inside 12 miles, a distance no carrier ever wants a foreign vessel to cross. Every sailor on duty feels the tension rise as the carrier holds its line, refusing to move even an inch. The Venezuelan ships stay in a tight formation, speeding forward like they intend to block a 100,000-ton carrier. Their navigation lights shine straight across the waves, bold and aggressive, making it clear this is not a routine patrol. Inside the bridge, officers watch the formation narrow. One wrong decision here could set off a crisis. And in that moment, with alarms blaring and 5 fast ships cutting close, one question fills the room: hold course or turn away. When 5 fast patrol ships rush a carrier strike group before sunrise, it is never a simple mistake. This part of the Caribbean may look calm, but every mile carries tension. Shipping lanes pass close to Venezuela. Radar sites watch every movement, and both sides know these waters can shift from routine to dangerous in moments. That is why this clash matters. The USS George Washington is not just another ship. It represents the freedom of movement the US Navy protects worldwide. If a carrier changes course because another nation presses in, that decision can echo far beyond one morning on the water. For the sailors on deck, the pressure is personal. At 12 miles, a carrier cannot turn fast or outrun anyone. Its size gives it strength, but it also makes it slow to maneuver. A small patrol ship can cut across its path in seconds. A carrier cannot dodge in time. That is why the early approach of those 5 ships hit so hard. Speed and angle alone can trigger a crisis long before weapons matter. To Venezuela, pushing into that narrow lane sends a bold message: we control this area. To the United States, holding course sends another: these waters stay open to all. Millions of tons of fuel and cargo move through this region every year. One shift in control could affect the entire region, from trade routes to political balance. Everyone on watch that morning knew another truth: 5 fast ships closing in tight are not just observing. They are testing resolve, reactions, and who blinks first. Moments like this reveal what training cannot show: how crews act when seconds count and intentions are unclear. The larger question becomes what this move was meant to set up. If this pressure works once, will it be repeated? And how far will each side go to prevent that? If you think the carrier was right to hold steady, press 1. If you believe turning would have avoided risk, press 9 and tell us. The bridge of the USS George Washington went silent the moment the pattern became clear. 5 Venezuelan patrol ships were not drifting or scouting. They were driving straight toward the carrier's path at high speed, holding a tight line with no signs of slowing. On radar, their returns formed a sharp wedge, closing the distance faster than anyone wanted to see this early in the morning. No sailor needed an explanation. 5 fast boats in formation meant they were trying to force a moment. The watch officer made the call without hesitation. Gravely moved to block. A second later, the USS Gravely powered up. The destroyer turned into a wide, steady arc, aiming directly toward the intercept line. The movement was calm and deliberate, the kind of posture the US Navy uses when it wants the other side to understand that the strike group will not back down. On the destroyer's deck, the MH-60R Seahawk lifted off, climbing into the dim sky and taking position above the Gravely. From up there, the helicopter could watch every shift in speed from the 5 ships below. Its presence made the message even clearer. The carrier group saw everything, and nothing would catch them by surprise. Inside Gravely's combat center, the incoming formation looked even more direct. All 5 ships held their angle perfectly. No drift, no hesitation, no sign of easing off the throttle. Vessels that want to avoid trouble usually widen out or cut speed. These 5 did neither. They pushed ahead, testing how firm the carrier group would stand. Gravely continued forward until it placed itself squarely between the carrier and the incoming formation. This was the soft block, the move meant to force the other side to reveal intent without raising weapons. If Venezuela wanted to keep coming, it would now have to angle toward a United States destroyer, a decision no commander makes lightly. The tactical officer on the carrier called out the new range, 6 miles. At that distance, reaction time drops to almost nothing. A fast turn or a bad guess could turn the encounter into a collision. But the George Washington kept 20 knots with no change of course. That steady line was the statement. Pressure would not decide their path. As the destroyer locked into its angle, the next move belonged to Venezuela. 5 ships, 1 narrow path, and a choice that could change everything. Fast Venezuelan patrol ships kept pushing forward, throwing white water off their bows as they closed the gap. From Gravely's bridge, every ship in wake felt sharper. At this distance, even a small turn can decide who controls the moment. The destroyer held steady, forcing Venezuela to reveal its next move. But the 5 patrol ships did not ease off. They stayed tight, straight, and fast. On radar, their bright returns formed a firm line pushing in with purpose. Nothing about their movement signaled caution. On deck, the Mark 45 gun rotated a few degrees toward the formation. It wasn't aimed, but anyone watching knew what it meant. Moments later, the CIWS dome shifted into a slow, passive sweep, scanning the sea without sending threat signals. These subtle moves were meant to show readiness without escalating. Above the destroyer, the MH-60R Seahawk widened its orbit. Its camera captured the spray from the bows, the long wakes, and the formation that refused to open. The live feed streamed to Gravely's combat center, where techs watched for even a hint of slowdown. None came. All 5 ships held their speed. Inside the destroyer, the tactical display updated again. Same angle, same spacing, same push. The officer of the deck called out the new range with steady control. This had become a test of resolve. The side that moved first would send the message the other was waiting for. On the carrier, the USS George Washington held 20 knots, refusing to turn a single degree. Holding course was the point. A carrier cannot shift for small patrol ships without setting a precedent that returns later. The crew knew exactly why the ship stayed locked on its line. Then the range dropped to 4 miles, close enough for sailors to see the shapes of the 5 Venezuelan vessels through the morning haze. Engines roared across the water. Wakes stretched long behind the fast boats. The escalation was not in weapons. It was in movement. 5 ships pressing hard, 1 destroyer standing firm, and a carrier backing it with sheer presence. Every sailor felt the weight of the narrowing gap. One wrong call could change the whole encounter. If you were watching that distance shrink, would you hold steady or turn away? Press 1 or 9 and tell us. The twist appeared first as a tiny change on the radar. Inside the USS Gravely's combat center, the lead Venezuelan patrol ship, after miles of pushing hard toward the strike group, suddenly eased off a few knots. It was barely noticeable, but it broke the perfect pattern they had kept since the start. Seconds later, the other 4 ships matched the drop. 5 fast returns, all softening at once. The bridge stayed silent as the crew watched the Seahawks live feed. The long white wakes behind the Venezuelan ships, once sharp and fast, shortened into calmer trails. They weren't turning away, but the pressure they had pushed so aggressively was fading. Their tight spacing opened slightly. Their angle drifted off the intercept line. These small changes were the first real signs of backing down. On the USS George Washington, the carrier held 20 knots without turning a degree. That steady line now forced Venezuela to make a clear choice: push toward a United States destroyer or pull away. The radar made the answer obvious. The push was breaking. Above, the Seahawk tracked the formation bending east. Officers on the Venezuelan decks moved with quick gestures, adjusting positions as if trying to manage a retreat without admitting it. But the camera caught every detail. This wasn't an accident. It was the moment their confidence finally slipped. Inside Gravely, the officer of the deck confirmed what everyone already saw. They're giving up the angle. The words were simple. but they carried the weight of the entire standoff. The test Venezuela had created was ending not with a fight, but with a slow, quiet retreat disguised as a course change. For the crews watching the screens, the twist brought a mix of relief and caution. Relief because the danger was easing. Caution because a move like this rarely ends the story. It usually sets up the next one. The climax of the standoff came when the Venezuelan formation began pulling away. A retreat may look simple, but for the USS Gravely, this was often the most unpredictable moment. Fast patrol ships easing off speed can drift into unsafe angles, and one wrong turn can undo minutes of careful control. That is why the destroyer held its blocking line with sharp focus. The danger had changed form, not vanished. On radar, the formation curved east, but unevenly. The lead ship slowed first, the next two followed, and the last pair reacted late. That hesitation created a stagger that could turn into a crossing angle. Gravely made only a slight adjustment, enough to hold a safe buffer while keeping its firm posture. At close range, even small moves matter. Above, the MH-60R Seahawk lowered its orbit. Its camera showed wakes widening and bows lifting as the patrol ships eased off speed. Officers on their decks moved quickly, trying to manage the retreat, but the shift was messy. One ship turned too wide, another corrected sharply, and two lagged behind. The tight, confident push they began with was gone. From the USS George Washington, the view grew clearer as the formation drifted east. The carrier held 20 knots, never turning, letting the destroyer manage the danger ahead. Sailors on deck could see the silhouettes of the 5 ships through the morning haze. Even without weapons raised, 2 vessels passing within a few miles at changing speeds can shift the entire encounter in seconds. Inside Gravely, the combat center confirmed speeds dropping across the formation. The long white wakes behind the fast boats softened into thin trails. The aggressive pressure that marked the start of the encounter faded into a slow slide away from the strike group's track. The Seahawk made one final loop, confirming the new heading. All 5 ships were now clear. Only then did Gravely ease its posture, staying steady but no longer preparing for sudden action. The peak of the confrontation had passed without a warning shot. The USS George Washington never changed course, proving that holding firm can end a standoff as effectively as any weapon. If you watch them drift away, would you feel relief or wonder when the next test will arrive? Press 1 or 9 and tell us. When the Venezuelan ships finally drifted east, the tension on both the USS Gravely and the USS George Washington slowly eased. The destroyer held its blocking line until the formation faded off radar, then slid back into its escort position. The carrier never turned a degree, continuing its planned transit as if the confrontation had been just another moment on the open sea. But everyone who watched it unfold knew how close it had come to becoming something far more serious. In the hours that followed, the strike group reviewed the event. Every radar return, every shift in speed, every second of video from the Seahawk was logged and analyzed. None of the Venezuelan ships had raised weapons, but their tight formation, high speed, and refusal to slow until the final minutes showed this wasn't a simple patrol. It was a deliberate pressure test. Moments like this shape regional stability more than any headline. If a carrier changes course under pressure, even once, it becomes easier for another nation to try the same move again. That is why the George Washington's steady line mattered. It reminded everyone watching that the US Navy will not give up open waters to intimidation. For the crews, the lesson was clear. They saw how quickly a calm morning can turn tense and how close-range maneuvers between fast ships and a carrier strike group require discipline, not panic. They also saw the value of the Seahawk overhead, the soft block by the Gravely, and the steady pace of the carrier behind it. These elements together prevented escalation without a single weapon being fired. Analysts will likely point to this encounter as another sign that the region is entering a more unpredictable phase. Small ships may try bold moves, pushing for reactions and testing boundaries. A quiet retreat today can set up a larger test tomorrow. And the next time, the angle or timing may be different. So the final question goes to you. After watching 5 patrol ships rush a carrier group and then peel away at the last moment, Do you think this was the end, or only the opening chapter of something bigger? Press 1 or 9 and tell us.